Good morning, everybody. I hope you're all doing well. Um, just another day and full of reports of illegal alien crime in the United States. Isn't this just wonderful? And it just keeps getting worse. Um, and I have little Bella who's got like a hiccuping kind of a thing going on. So she might be a little needy this morning. Miss Bella, you want to come up and say hi to everybody? Say hi. Say hi. Yes, say hi, everybody. All right. And she's being a little sassy at the front window too here because there's been a lady walking by with a baby in a stroller. So who knows what today's going to bring, right? I'm going to go out a little bit later. As hot as it is here in Arizona, we got to be knocking doors. We have to be engaging with voters and especially the disengaged voters. And I was just listening to the good morning, Laura. Thank you for joining me. I was just listening to the news before I started the podcast, and they were saying that this women's sportswear company had this ad on TikTok, and they played it on the news, and it was about standing up for women's rights and um, fighting for women to have their own sports and not having men involved in it. Women are have a right to their own privacy, not having these men in the locker rooms and the restrooms and stuff. And TikTok pulled all their ads. And so the news hosts were saying that they went into Twitter rules and those types of things. And it was saying that because it's a temporary suspension, I guess, at this point, could become permanent. But that a viewer would have had to complain about it. And I think, isn't it ironic that the trans community can have all kinds of commercials? I mean, even this administration can put commercials out, and Department of Homeland Security can put, Happy Trans Day and all that type of stuff. And that is acceptable. But a woman sports clothing line company putting out a statement standing up for women's rights is now something that isn't going to be acceptable in our society, I guess. And it's really sad that it's come to this because women fought so hard to have the recognition in the workplace and in the world and in politics and in the corporate world. And now it's come down to where men are just trying to blend in with us and make us not that special anymore, is the point. And I go back to, and I'm going to be using some words, but I go back to that deal just recently where I think it was a health organization or a doctor, or they were talking about a vagina up in Canada, and they were just like slammed by the trans community, and they had to change their verbiage to front hole. Are you serious? This is how deranged this country is. This is how deranged, well, that's up in Canada, but this is how deranged this very small group of people are. And they are becoming the loud voices, and they are the ones that everybody listens to. I think I've seen statistics that across the United States, they're less than 3.5% of the population. And yet this is who media, this is who, influencers, this is who everybody is listening to and kowtowing to and bowing down to. It was the same thing when it was Black Lives Matter and Antifa going through and just, wreaking havoc on our communities and burning down our communities. And, but everybody was on board with them. And then look at what they did. All those people were taken for all the millions of dollars that they contributed, not only to enrich the founders of it and give them the lifestyle that they were longing for and so jealous of other people who had the lifestyle that they didn't have because they hadn't worked as hard for it. And So everybody was listening to them, and everybody was like running in and joining them and going out into the streets and joining in the mayhem in the communities. And where did it get us? Those people didn't spend the money to make Black Lives Matter at all, except for their own. And they were left with burned down communities and people who were held unaccountable for the crimes they were committing. And they wonder why crime is so rampant in some of these big cities. It's because of the unaccountability for everything that happened back in that summer. People just saw, it doesn't matter what you do. You're not going to be held accountable. You're not going to be put in jail. You're not going to have anything on your record. You may have a mugshot, but it'll be taken down soon because they're going to arrest you and then they're going to release you and nothing's going to come of it. And some of these people were attacking and damaging federal buildings. And look at the police substation that they burned down. That was in Philadelphia, I believe. But, that was state property. And nothing happened to those people. And to make matters worse, nothing happens to illegal criminals who come to our country. And they do even worse things. They murder and rape women and children here in our country. And I was reading this article. I was pretty sickened by this. I got to find the article because I have a bunch of them pulled up in my bar. Where is it? Sorry. All right, let me go back into this source and see where I can find it. Hold on a second. It's my research girl. I about died when I saw this article. Okay, now I know which one it is. So I'm going to share this with you so that you can see it. So we just come off the whole situation with Rachel Morin and how that guy had come across our border, illegally, and the one who had raped the 13-year-old, all of those things. So this guy here, ICE arrests an illegal migrant convicted of sexually abusing a minor in Maryland. So the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, officials last week arrested a Salvadorian citizen in Maryland who was previously convicted of sexually abusing a minor. Enforcement and removal operations, the ERO, Baltimore, an ICE unit arrested 39-year-old Luis Henriquez in Ellicott City. He illegally entered the U.S. before his August conviction. Now, this is the part that pisses me off. Charging documents show a 14-year-old relative accused him ahead of his conviction of repeatedly raping and assaulting her. 14 years old. The 39-year-old was sentenced to 25 years in prison. Okay, I'm all right with that. But a Baltimore County, Maryland judge reduced the sentence to less than 2 years. This happens a lot in Maryland, guys, where these judges there are reducing the sentences of these illegal criminals, and especially those that were sentenced for sexual abuse against women and children. They're reducing their sentences. I can't tell you how many articles I've seen about this. ICE says that he represented a significant threat to the children of our Maryland neighborhoods. And ERO Baltimore continues to prioritize public safety by apprehending and removing the most, I can never say that word, the most terrible non-citizen offenders from our communities, and we are only out for the worst of the worst. So in April, he was booked for a 1-year sentence on a DUI charge, just over a year after he was charged for another DUI. He also committed several traffic violations, including driving without a license and with a suspended one, as well as dangerously changing lanes. So this guy is a repeat offender. And last month, before ERO arrested him, last month, ERO Baltimore arrested a Dominican Republican citizen wanted for manslaughter in his home country, and he was caused with injury causing death in 2022. He came to Maryland in an attempt to evade a serious charge in his home country. He posed a significant threat to our Maryland communities, and we will not allow Maryland to become a safe haven for the world's criminals. The unit has arrested more than 270 people since October, and in April, former Maryland Governor Larry Hogan, who is running for U.S. Senate, argued the situation at the border was hurting communities while politicians prioritize campaigns over solutions. The thing is, this dude, this pig, who was repeatedly raping and assaulting a 14-year-old relative, female relative, got 25 years in prison, which he should have gotten. And what I really want to find out, and I'm going to kind of look into this a little further, is what made that Maryland judge, what information did she get or have to reduce the sentence from 25 years to 2 years for an illegal rapist? What possible information could she have gotten to have reduced the sentence by 23 years? 23 more years he would have been sitting in prison. But she decided, no, that was too much for him. Guaranteed, if that was an American citizen, they would be sitting in prison for 25 years. They're not shown the leniency, not that they should be, but my point being, if anybody would be shown leniency or the judge would show some sort of leniency, why wouldn't it be an American citizen? And I'm not saying that should, folks. This isn't what I'm saying at all, especially in a rape situation like this, child rape. But let's just say it was a vehicular manslaughter. Let's say it was an assault. The judges anymore, in most of the cases that I've read, are showing more leniency towards illegal criminals than they will towards American criminals. It's just a fact. It's happening. Even with the DACA participants, and I was talking about this the other day, when Obama illegally put together the DACA program, the Dreamer program, you could have up to 3 misdemeanors and stay in the program. Once you committed more than 3 misdemeanors, you were supposed to be kicked out of the program and deported out of our country. However, they never vetted any of those people who signed on to become a part of the program. And so a lot of them were onboarded and were already criminals and had committed crimes, had misdemeanors, and in some cases, even felonies on their record. And this wasn't discovered until years later, until a reporter went in and started doing the investigation on it. So a lot of these dreamers are committing felonies. And when they get into the courtroom, or, before this all happens, they have a powwow and with the defense judge or the defense attorney and the judge, and they decide that it's warranted to reduce the felony to a misdemeanor because, for goodness sakes, they're going to be kicked out of the program. We got to be able to help them. We have to help these criminals stay in our country. That is the mantra of the Biden administration, of the Democratic Party in America. We need to allow these people to come here, even if they're criminals. We don't care. We're not going to do a full background at the border. Let them come in. And if they start committing crimes here, we'll act like we can't find them. We'll find them. We'll arrest them. We'll make a big deal about it on the news, and let the story fade because we'll have some other terrible crime that another illegal has committed, and so this story will be in the background soon. And of course, the liberal media, like I was showing you yesterday, the video of Joy Reid talking with Congresswoman Jayapal, that they were really upset, not actually upset. They were just kind of stunned that CNN and MSNBC were talking about the fact that Biden was giving amnesty to over 500,000 illegal spouses and 50,000 illegal children, and that Fox had the audacity to have up on their screen at the same time that MSNBC and CNN was reporting on that Fox had the audacity to have on their screen the Ecuadorian migrant who was arrested for raping the 13-year-old in broad daylight in the park with the machete type knife, filming the whole thing. They don't care about the crimes that these illegals are committing. They're clapping their hands because 550,000 more of them have been given asylum. Actually, 550,000. They're clapping that that's happening, and they could care less about the 13-year-old girl who was violently raped in the park in broad daylight, whose life, who knows what type of counseling and PTSD she's going to have the rest of her life. That doesn't matter. Who knows what diseases she may have? We don't know what this guy has. What damage was done to her sexually? Is she going to be able to have children? None of these kind of questions are asked about the victims of illegal alien crime. Nobody talked about the dreams of the young Americans who were killed by illegal criminals. They had dreams too, folks. They had a life planned out for themselves. And they were cut short, wiped out, erased. It's just collateral damage. We don't have to worry about it. Let's talk about the illegal aliens and, what they're suffering. Let's talk about them. Let's talk about how hard it is for them to get to the border. That's more important, right? All right. So 5 men are charged with kidnapping after a missing Indiana teen found in Northeast Missouri. 5 men. So 5 men were taken into custody. They kidnapped a 14-year-old girl from her home in Indiana. The teen's father had last seen her getting in a black SUV and reported her missing. And just before 2 a.m. on Monday, the Missouri State Highway Patrol officers were notified that the girl's cell phone was pinged going westbound on U.S. Highway 36. And a short time later, one of the sergeants saw a black SUV with Texas plates heading west. And so they made a stop in Macon County. And the trooper looked in the vehicle, saw the juvenile in the back. She identified herself as the missing teen. With the help of the Macon County Sheriff's Office and Macon Police Department, the trooper took the following men into custody. Now remember, these are just 5 men charged with kidnapping. Well, one was a 44-year-old from Honduras. One was a 41-year-old from Mexico. Another was a 24-year-old from Mexico. Another was a 19-year-old from Honduras. And the other one was a 56-year-old from Honduras. These aren't just 5 men. They're 5 illegal criminals. Authorities believe that they were taking the girl to California, where she was to meet with an unknown man she met on the internet. So they're on the internet, in touch with our young children. And this is why we have to be so careful with the type of social media that our children are involved in. These people will go to great lengths to get our children. They want our children. that girl was probably going to disappear in California and become sexually trafficked there. She wasn't going to have a very good life. Thank God for the trooper who, saw the vehicle, pulled them over, and rescued that girl. But, we got to touch on the fact that family units are falling apart, which, of course, is a whole part of this one world order liberal plan, is to have our family units fall apart, to not have a mother and a father in the home. I don't care what race or creed you are. It's just what they're trying to do to America, because family values are so strong here. So you get rid of the family values and the strong connections at home and the open lines of communication, and the economy's crappy. So moms and dads both have to be working. Single moms are working couple jobs. Single dads are probably doing the same thing. And what guidance do these children have at home? So they're on the internet constantly. And they find, somebody sees them on there and messages them and seems interested in them. And, oh, you're so pretty. And I love you. And I want to meet you. All the things that a young child and a young girl long to hear, because they're not hearing that at home. They're not getting their hearts full. They're not feeling the love from their parents. So that, and of course, all the different apps that are on there on the internet. And of course, Snapchat's the most famous one, because anything that's on there disappears. There's not going to be able to be traces of that. Can't go back and look at that kind of stuff. So that's where a lot of these creeps get a hold of these young girls and young boys. So, it wasn't just the 13-year-old girl, and it wasn't just Rachel Morin, folks. A homeless woman was sexually assaulted while sleeping outside a Staten Island ferry terminal. This was just the 20th, today. Today is when this came out. A homeless woman sleeping outside the Staten Island terminal ferry terminal was awakened by a creep sexually assaulting her in a real-life nightmare on Wednesday morning. So just yesterday morning. The 35-year-old was sleeping on the ground near a restaurant in the St. George terminal when the stranger approached her and began sexually abusing her at about 4:20. The woman, who is known to frequently bunk in the area, was not physically injured during the assault, and the male suspect fled on foot, and there have been no arrests. But this is a picture of him. He's an illegal. Guaranteed. So this isn't just a few of these incidences here and there. It's happening all the time. Reading tons of them. Let me see. And then seen lots of videos lately of the people who live in Detroit and in New York really complaining about the fact that these illegals are getting preferential treatment over American citizens, screaming at these board meetings and city council meetings and stuff, the citizens, about, this is our money, why are you giving it away to these illegals? So elected officials protest, and actually this is different. Elected officials are protesting latest New York City plan to move migrants into Staten Island Church on Tuesday. So this is the Faith United Methodist Church on Staten Island. And of course, New York was wanting to move a bunch of illegals out there to Staten Island and move into this church. And elected officials and community leaders gathered to speak out against the city's latest plan to shelter migrants in a house of worship. I mean, what would happen for Sunday services, right? You show up at your church and you figure out that, oh, it's a hotel now. We're not going to be able to afford church. Borough President Vito Fossella, Councilwoman Hanks, she's a Democrat, Councilman Carr, he's a Republican, and James Smith of Port Richmond North Shore Alliance Civic Group led the press conference against the planned shelter for 15 men. Oh, yeah, 15 men, 15 single men, illegal men coming into Staten Island. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of these articles that I'm reading. The shelter would be run by New York Disaster Interface Services with one shower among the 15 men who would have access to the facility from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So what happens at 7 p.m.? They're out on the streets till 7 o'clock the next morning? Yeah, that's real smart. Just don't, on an island. Just tell these guys, get out of here at 7 p.m. and they'll be out wandering the streets all night long. Doing what? You can't make this stuff up, right? Mayor Adams announced in early June last year that the city would be using houses of worship to shelter migrants arriving in the city, and that included 2 houses of worship on Staten Island. A claim some local elected officials disputed. A total of 6 houses of worship had been identified for shelters on Staten Island, but they couldn't specify which ones. Yeah, they're talking about, they've been trying to revitalize the Staten Island area, and now this is kind of like a big step backwards. People work hard, invest in local storefronts, invest in local restaurants, invest in their homes, and yet out of the blue, the dark of the night, we were told last week, guess what? Despite your best efforts, we're going to open a migrant shelter. It's not just happening on Staten Island. This is happening all over the country. Look at San Diego right now. I mean, they're still being inundated with tons of illegals, even though Gavin Newsom and all these Democratic elected officials want you to believe that they got a handle on this stuff. They don't. They don't have a handle on it. They're still facilitating it. And I will continue to go back and talk about the CBP app on these cell phones that every migrant has who comes over the border. They've got a cell phone. They have the CBP app. They've applied for it wherever they were, wherever they originally came from, or applied for it while they were traveling through Mexico. They arrive at a port of entry, show their cell phone, show the screen from the CBP app. I'm accepted into the United States for asylum, and they just tell them to go on in. No background check done. I don't even know if they're searching them at the border and their belongings, if they're going through x-ray machines to see if they're bringing guns, knives, machetes. I don't know if that's even happening down there at the ports of entry. Because don't forget, illegals get preferential treatment at airports. They don't have to go through the x-ray machines. They don't have to have their bags checked. They can walk through TSA with an open bottle of water, of Coke, of anything with the screw lids on. You and I can't. American citizens can't. So they get preferential treatment at the airport. Why wouldn't you think they're getting preferential treatment at the borders and not being searched and not being background checked, and none of that stuff is happening? We really need to start getting mad. Really mad. And of course, this is the thing that so many of us are worried about, that hundreds of migrants, hundreds of illegals from ISIS hotbed country have crossed the U.S. border under Biden. The number of migrants flocking to the U.S.-Mexico border from a country known as a hotbed of ISIS recruitment has skyrocketed under President Biden. More than 1,500 migrants from Tajikistan are known to have crossed the border between October 2020 and May of 2024. At least 50 talks have been caught so far this year. Talkies. over the previous 14 years, there were just 26 who had crossed our border. It is unknown how many of them were released into the U.S., but the vast majority of migrants caught at the border claim asylum and are allowed to stay while they await a court hearing. The small Central Asian country, which borders both China and Afghanistan, has become a major source of terrorists for ISIS and Islamic State Khorasan Province, an extreme offshoot of the Islamic State militant group. Javed Ali, a former counterterrorism official who now teaches at the University of Michigan, said the surge of Tazakistan nationals could include ISIS seeding people into the United States to prepare for a possible attack. The Post recently reported on ICE arresting 8 of them with suspected ties to ISIS who crossed the southern border and then settled in New York, Los Angeles, and Philadelphia. The threat of ISIS and its offshoots is self-evident, and ISIS-K was responsible for a massive attack on a concert hall in Moscow carried out by citizens of Tajikistan that killed 145 people and wounded hundreds more on March 22nd. So, you see these pictures. They show up, they cross the border illegally, they're just out in the middle of the desert. These are the people that they should be turning right back around and saying, adios. You didn't come here properly. You didn't come to a port of entry. I don't think that we should wait until we have 2,500 a day for 7 days in a row. That's just ridiculous. Mayorkas is setting up the United States for a terrorist attack, guaranteed. That's been his plan all along, is to take down the United States. The other thing, and I've talked about this many times on this show, the other thing that is happening, the violent Venezuelan gang Tren de Agua expanded its operations into the U.S. A man kidnapped and murdered in Doral, Florida. 2 New York City police officers shot. A sex trafficking ring that spanned several states broken up by law enforcement in Louisiana. These are some examples of the crimes being committed by a brutal Venezuelan gang called Tren de Agua. TDA was formed in the state of Agua in Venezuela, and its members have followed the wave of Venezuelans who have illegally crossed into the U.S. during the border crisis triggered by Joe Biden. In Venezuela, the gang has ties to the Nicolas Maduro regime, often acting as enforcers, and they control the vast majority of the criminal underworld and money-making schemes associated with it. Venezuelans have been one of the largest groups of people who have illegally crossed the southern border under the Biden administration. While many have directly come from Venezuela, others have been living in other Latin American countries since Venezuela's economic turndown. With the initial exodus, TDA members followed. These are gang members who exhibit obvious signs of affiliation, but it's fear of action. The Chile's Justice Ministry has accused a criminal organization of involvement in the kidnapping and murder of a former Venezuelan soldier in Santiago in 2021. While TDA was unheard of by the general public in 2022, recent actions by the TDA members are being noticed by both law enforcement and the mainstream media. These are really violent people. And they've got some, these are some of the tattoos that are associated with the gang. The semi-automatic rifle, baby feet, and looks like a watch. And I don't know what that is. But so, yeah, they're not good people, And there's a lot of them, and they're settling, of course, in the big cities because that's where they know, number one, they can go in and smash and grab a lot of these jewelry stores. They were the ones that were suspected that were behind the motor scooter attacks, where they were going through, grabbing people's purses, grabbing watches off of their arms, that sort of thing in New York City. I just can't even imagine what it would be like to be in New York City at this point. I think I would be scared to go there. I don't think I even have the urge to even go to New York City anymore. And it's sad because I've been there multiple times, and it was a very beautiful city with a lot of history and a lot of things to go see. But now I don't know. Doesn't sound like anything I'd want to do. This is pretty interesting too. I saw this little thing going on Twitter. So let me go back. And they're kind of making fun of it because it's pretty funny. I'll go into all of that. So Chris Hayes says people should take a moment to imagine the amount of terror, violence, expense, and destruction that is going to be necessary to deport 20 million people, and also think they won't just mess up and grab a whole bunch of American citizens while they're at it. And that was in response to J.D. Vance saying not having 20 million illegal aliens who need to be housed, often at public expense, will absolutely make housing more affordable for American citizens. But I see it's the left strategy of making fun of people for suffering under Biden policies continues. So this was, they said, imagine the horror of MSNBC's face when they realized that 62% of Americans want all illegal aliens deported, and 38% oppose that. This was a new national program to deport all undocumented immigrants with registered voters, and 62% of them were in favor of it. This was a poll done by CBS News. And then this Black gentleman, Clifton Duncan, kind of spoke up and said, yeah, that's a fantastic point. A lot of Black Americans might get deported because we don't know how to get IDs. Kind of making fun of the Democratic Party. And then, of course, this guy brought up a good point. You can get many illegal aliens to self-deport by, one, cutting off welfare programs available to them, severely punishing employers who hire them, lengthy prison sentences for illegals who stay and are found, offering cash for them to leave. The rest we round up. And somebody said absolutely not to number 4, which is lengthy prison sentences for illegals who stay and are found. And he said, why not? Denmark is one of Europe's more successful countries at reducing migration. They pay migrants to go home. It's often cheaper than hunting them down and going through the deportation process. Sweden's plan is inspired by Denmark, who has seen greater success with voluntary repatriation. I'm having a problem saying things today. Self-repatriate. I'm not even going to say it. I'm not. The plan came about after the Swedish Immigration Office was given the task of analyzing how to get more people to voluntarily move back to their home country. Sweden's plan is not unique, as Denmark, known for its restrictive approach to immigration, is already applying the model, so far with more success. In the last 10 years, 300 to 500 migrants have left Denmark every year, receiving a significant amount of financial support for this purpose. So, you pay them to go back to their country. A lot of them have spent all their money coming to wherever they've ended up, right? So if you go ahead and give them the money to get back home, and some money that they're going to be able to get on their feet when they get back home, a lot of them will take that opportunity, because the only reason that they're here to begin with, and I'm sure it's the same in Denmark or Sweden, was money. They claim they don't have any jobs. They're poor back in their country. Well, then why'd you spend your $10 or $15 or $20,000 that you had saved up? Why did you spend that to come here? You threw it out the door. You enriched the cartels. You gave them more power. Why would you even do that? Why would you spend your life savings on that sort of thing? How long could you have lived off of that money in your home country? So it's a lot cheaper to give them X amount of dollars and deport them and say bye-bye than to support them here in the United States. My gosh, the latest findings were it's going to be $458 or $481 billion to support illegal aliens in our country this year in 2024. And that's just on a federal level, folks. That's not counting all that money that New York is spending, and that Chicago is spending, and that Philadelphia is spending to house them, to feed them. So you add that all up, and we're probably looking at about $700 billion. When you go across the country and add up all the money that's being spent on a local, on a state, a county, or a city level, it is absolutely asinine that we've got cities and states with budget issues. And some places like Washington and Oregon, they're defunding, they're taking more money away from the law enforcement in their budget to start replacing it with illegal alien support, financial support. We can't continue on this path. And yet, they just keep coming. I'm going to share this one with you. See if I can get it to translate once I've shared it, because a lot of these articles are in Spanish. It didn't come over. Yes, it did. Migrants start a caravan. So there are more than 300 migrants who walk along the Tapachula Highway with the intention of advancing to the center of the country due to the lack of attention from the INM. So they left for Tapachula on Wednesday due to the lack of attention from the NIA, or it's a National Institute of Migration, as foreigners say that they have not received a response to their request for an average of 9 days. The group, made up of girls, boys, women, as well as men from Central South America, mainly seek to reach Tapachula since the weather conditions in the border municipality have caused them to get wet for several days, and they no longer wanted to wait for a pass to board a bus. Now, when they say they're coming from Central and South America, know that that is where they have been before they arrived there in Mexico. So these are people from all over the world. These are the people from Africa and all these Middle Eastern countries who are flying into Nicaragua and coming up through Central America and South America and going through the Darien Gap. Some of them are missing that because some of them from the Middle East, I don't know if a lot of them are still getting flights directly to Mexico City, but that was happening a lot. And especially with the illegals from Africa. They were getting flights directly into Mexico City, and then they were able to, and of course it was round-way tickets, but they just don't use a return flight because they're not allowed to get one-way tickets into Mexico. But, and then they get up to the border, and I think a lot of them are coming up through San Diego and up through Yuma and Southern Arizona is where a lot of those African, a lot of the Chinese, and a lot of the Middle Eastern people are coming. So they may be flying directly into Mexico City. The people who don't have the money and the means to fly into Mexico City, then they have to go through, a lot of them fly into Nicaragua, and then they make that trek out through the Darien Gap and come up that way. But I know that there was a lot of rain that was heading into that area. And so the Mexican officials were trying to get them to get into shelters, but they decided not to. So a Venezuelan migrant mentioned that they decided to walk since many migrants are getting sick due to the weather conditions in which they find themselves waiting for the authorities to attend to them. Many of us are getting sick because they do not have a place to shelter from the rains and have to use cardboard and plastic bags. They improvise to try to cover themselves from the rain and the cold, and it's causing them to get sick, mainly minors and older adults. But he said that the intention is to reach Tapachula and wait for the authorities to attend to them, but said that if they do not do so well, they will continue walking along the coastal highway to leave Chiapas and reach their final destination, which is the north of the country with the United States. So so here they are crossing that river. All the people over there waiting to still come over. It's just insane. And it's insane to think that the United Nations is behind a lot of this, facilitating this. And, we're in the summer months here in the Northern Hemisphere. And so in the Southern Hemisphere, they're going into winter. And so it's going to start getting cold. It's cold. It's going to get miserable for those people. And then they come up here, they're hit with the tropical weather there in Mexico. And then they come up here and then they're hit with the severe heat. No matter where they cross across the border into the United States, whether it's Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, or California, they're going to be hit with extreme heat with the desert conditions all along the border. So extreme weather situations. And of course, the United Nations, the one world order people, they don't care about what they put these people through. They don't care if they die along the way. They're just a number. I was watching this video last night, and it's I can't think of the name of it, but it's going to be coming out here in the next day or two. They're doing this big expose on the 85,000 missing children from the Biden administration, the unaccompanied minors. And they actually got records from an insider of addresses of where they've been sending these children. And so the teaser of the video was one of the reporters for this organization, and I can't remember the name of it. They were standing in front of a home that was the address that was given to them that two of the children were sent to, and it was a boarded up home, and the neighbor said nobody has lived there for years. And so, the question is, where are these unaccompanied minors that have come across our southern border? And the reporter was saying, they could be dead. They could be across the country. They could be in another country. We don't know where these children are. This is what the sick and demented Biden administration is allowed to happen. Mayorkas, you pig. Biden's HHS, which is Health and Human Services, released 400,000 illegal immigrant minors into the U.S., mostly teen males with no oversight. So a report from the Judiciary Committee stated that the policies have allowed teenage unaccompanied alien children to commit crimes against Americans, including the killing of a 19-year-old autistic woman in Maryland. And let's see. Policy from the Biden administration as a Border Patrol refer UAC, unaccompanied minor cases, over to the Office of Refugee resettlement within the Department of Health and Human Services. More than 400,000 unaccompanied children have been referred to a sponsor during the Biden administration alone by HHS, double that of Trump's whole 4 years in office. Most of these unaccompanied minors are teenage boys, not infants or small children. And the report states, and HHS data shows that 70% of those unaccompanied minors placed by HHS were over the age of 15. Additionally, as the report states, HHS data shows that males accounted for 61% of unaccompanied minor encounters in fiscal year 2023, 64% in 2022, and 66% in 2021. However, other soft policies have allowed gang-affiliated and criminal unaccompanied minors to commit heinous crimes, including in the widely reported death of Kayla Hamilton. As the Judiciary Committee and Immigration Subcommittee's oversight has shown, HHS's failure has also led to the release of unaccompanied minors who have gone on to commit crimes against Americans. Hamilton was raped as well as strangled to death in 2022, with the accused suspect being a teenage illegal immigrant who went through the unaccompanied minor program, per the report from the Judiciary Committee. He was a member of the MS-13 gang in El Salvador. The comments came to light in the death of Rachel Moore, the mother of 5, who's accused killer and rapist. An illegal alien was arrested last week in Tulsa. Anyway, this just goes on and on and on, that HHS and the Biden administration and Mayorkas, they have all been very lax in keeping track of these children. And I want to remind you all, when AOC did her little dramatic scene at the border in front of the chain link fence that, no children were behind, in her little white outfit, the children, but what is Trump doing to the children? Where is the outrage, folks? And I don't care that they're illegal children. And some of these little gangster kids, and a lot of these men, these young males from Ecuador, they're a lot shorter in stature, and they can come here and say that they're 16 and they'll be believed. So 16, 17. So those types of people, not too happy about that. But come here, baby. She's having one of her hiccup choking things. These unaccompanied minors, they're children. We have to be concerned about what this administration, what these sickos in this world are doing with these over 400,000 unaccompanied minors. And the report that's going to be coming out, the research that was done in this bombshell report, is only speaking to 85,000 of them. But there needs to be accountability for all 400,000 of them. We can't just continue to have these open borders, the crime, the Americans being killed, the innocent children who are being brought across the border. They're disappearing, and that they're probably being sex trafficked. And who knows, maybe their parents sold them. Maybe they were kidnapped to be brought here to be moneymakers, because drug trafficking makes them money once, but sex trafficking brings them money multiple times. And so these children are very, very valuable to these sick individuals in this world, in this country. Anyway, I hope you all have a great weekend. Thank you for joining me today. I'm still working very hard to get guests on here. Everybody is so busy. I haven't been able to pin down times with several people that I really want to get on here. But keep your fingers crossed. I may have a couple guys from the Relentless Patriot come on to my podcast. I'm hoping next week, and have a nice discussion with them. So have a wonderful weekend. Again, thank you for joining me, and I will see you next week.